Does your Philips Sonicare toothbrush look like this when you move it with your finger? It's not supposed to be that way. This is what it would be doing if it weren't broken. It's not supposed to be that way at all. This is what it should look like. Almost no movement. And if it's making this kind of noise, it's not supposed to do that. It's probably broken. There is a possibility that there's just a loose screw inside, but I think in most cases you'll find that there is a broken part. I'm going to show you how to fix your toothbrush in this video. The first thing you have to do is to take the toothbrush mechanism out of this case that it's in. This bottom of the toothbrush is the place where the mechanism is taken out of the case. If you look at that, you may see what looks to be maybe a screwdriver slot, and you might think that you're supposed to turn this to take it out. That isn't the way it works. If you look a little more closely, you'll see that it's an oblong shape there, so it's not something round where you could just twist it or turn it to take it out. In looking at the bottom of this toothbrush, you can see that when I've taken it apart earlier, I've just used a screwdriver to pry that bottom part out. That will work, but I found a better method on YouTube that makes a lot of sense once you see what the mechanism is inside the case. What you need to do is to squeeze the case in this direction, which will remove the oblong shape, and this releases some catches that are inside, making it easy to get the mechanism out. The first thing we need to do is to wrap a rag around the outside of the case so that we don't scratch it up with the pliers that we're going to use to do the squeezing. When you're going to squeeze this case with the pliers, you don't want to do it right at the very bottom of the toothbrush, because this would trap the little bottom plate that we're trying to get out of the case. You need to put the pliers up on the toothbrush a little higher away from that bottom plate, as you can kind of see in the picture here. And then you apply a squeezing force in the direction that would tend to remove the oblong shape. At the same time, press the toothbrush top down on the table under it, and as you can see, the mechanism will pop right out of that case there. Once you get the bottom snapped loose from the case, that's really all there is to it. There's nothing else holding the mechanism in the case. All you have to do is pull and it will come right out. Let me show you what we did when we deformed the case so that you might understand how this method works to get the mechanism out of the case. You can see that there is a recess down inside the case away maybe a ½ inch or so, and there is one of those on each side of the case. On the mechanism itself, there are protrusions, one on each side of the mechanism, that lock into those recesses in the case, and that's what holds the mechanism in. When you deform the case, you cause those recesses to move away from the protrusions, allowing them to be released. So now let's look at the part of the toothbrush mechanism that probably needs to be replaced. You can see that there's a screw here, and it's possible that on your toothbrush this screw has simply become loose. If you can tighten that, that may be all that is needed on your toothbrush. On this toothbrush, that screw is already tight, so that's not going to help. What you can see here is that the screw itself is not moving. It shouldn't be anywhere near this loose. What we need to do now is to remove this shaft part out of the rest of the toothbrush mechanism. You can see that there are little plastic tabs sticking into the metal holes there, and all we do is lift the metal a little bit so that those plastic tabs can be freed. We do that on each side, and then it's possible to just pull that shaft mechanism out from the rest of the toothbrush, as you can see here. And what we see inside here is that this piece of cast metal has broken, and I think that's what you'll find in yours. Here's the other piece of it. We will now remove this screw so that we can get the other half of that broken part out. This piece that I'm taking off here is just a clamp that holds the shaft mechanism onto the vibrating part of the toothbrush. What we see in the remaining part of the toothbrush mechanism is that other piece that's broken. That has to be extracted, of course. So in this picture, I've put the parts that are broken back together, just holding them with my fingers. You can see the nut there that screw goes in, and what's happened is that piece there is just totally broken. That's what's happened to the toothbrush. I tried gluing these parts back together with a combination of super glue and metallic epoxy, and it actually lasted about a month, which was much longer than I thought it would last. But I think it's time to actually replace this part now. The replacement part I found on eBay. They seem to all come from China. Make sure when you order this part that you get the whole assembly, the whole shaft assembly. There are quite a few sellers on eBay that are selling the seal at the top and the little rubber ring. Those are not what you need. You need to make sure you get the whole assembly. You can see in this picture of the rest of the toothbrush assembly a little triangular shaped bracket that holds the shaft mechanism that we're going to install here. There is a hole in the top of it where the screw goes in, and that's what clamps it together. So now in the new part we need to take the screw out of there that's holding the clamp in so that we can assemble it. Here you'll see that I've taken the screw loose that's holding the clamp part on, and you see that there's thread locker on that screw. There's obviously a whole lot of vibration on this part, and so I think it's probably a really good idea to put new thread locker on it before you reassemble it. Here we see the two parts taken apart, the clamp piece and the other part that goes inside the triangle bracket. This is the piece that was broken on the old shaft assembly, of course, and it's nice and solid on this one. Let's show you again what we're putting together here. So the nut on that part goes on the back of the toothbrush, and this triangle shaped piece here goes in the triangle bracket on the toothbrush assembly. So we just stick the parts together as you see here, again with the nut at the back, and you can now see there's the nut at the back, and if we just press this piece down, it'll all snap together. And now we see the assembled part. If you look down in the middle part there, you can see the hole where we put the clamp screw in to clamp everything together. I do have both the high strength thread locker and the medium strength. I think because there is so much vibration on this part that I'm going to use the high strength thread locker. This flat portion of the clamp assembly goes to the top of the toothbrush, as you see here. So there's our part in the toothbrush without the screw, and here's our screw with thread locker on it. And now all we have to do is put this in the hole and tighten it down. And you're finished. So let me show you now what this looks like now that we've repaired it. You'll see that there's almost no motion here at all. Another thing I wanted to point out was the angle that the tip of the shaft makes with the rest of the toothbrush. It looks like it's kind of leaning forward, and that is correct. It actually does that. There's nothing wrong with it there. Let's talk a little bit about some of the parts that are in this toothbrush assembly. The white piece on the end, of course, is what was holding the mechanism inside the toothbrush case. Also in that white piece, there is a coil of wire that's what's used for the inductive charging of the toothbrush. Above that is the lithium-ion battery that powers the toothbrush, and then the motor that causes the vibration that cleans your teeth. While you're working on your toothbrush, it may actually kind of come apart there in the middle, and so I wanted to show you how it's put together in case you need to fix yours once it does that. If the bottom part of the toothbrush is pulled down too far, it may separate from the other part of the toothbrush. And there's also a little spring mechanism there that would also potentially fall out. So the spring part is shaped like this. The spring itself goes to the bottom of the toothbrush, and there is a little notch in the battery case where a plastic tab on the spring assembly mates together. So spring on the bottom, this goes in like this. And so if you can see on the little metal piece above the motor that there are little slots in that bracket, and those slots will lock together with plastic tabs that are on the bottom of the circuit board mounting bracket, and if you just put those together at the bottom and then slide it up, that will all lock together like it was originally. So that's your reassembled toothbrush with the new part in it, all ready to be put back into the case. On this particular toothbrush, there's nothing that needs to be done to make sure that the buttons in the case clear the circuit board assemblies, but I've heard that on some toothbrush models that is necessary. As we put this together, we're making sure that the buttons on the circuit board assembly are lined up with the buttons on the housing itself. And this just presses together. Nothing special needs to be done for the other end of the toothbrush, and that snaps into place. And there you have your reassembled toothbrush. So now again, once it's reassembled, you'll see that there is no movement in this end piece. That's the way it should be. When we put the toothbrush head on it, it is relatively quiet. Congratulations! Your toothbrush is now fixed. I hope you found this information to be helpful.